Alright, so the recording started, and I'm beginning this lesson in this new classroom I'm calling it, where it's like a spotlight on Discord, so it's very interesting. And I've got a few different topics that I want to touch upon in what I'm going to speak about today. Let me just pull up the chat just so I can see this as well. Yeah, alright, move this over. So I'll share my screen for you guys to see as well. Alright, let me know you guys can see this okay. Because I've got the chat open as well, so I can see what you guys want to say. Yeah, perfect. Alright, so there's this term that I've come across called inertia, which is the tendency for objects that are stationary to stay stationary. Now, you guys might have heard of this before, but I really like the analogy when it's put into terms of an entrepreneur in their journey. Because here's another example, okay? So for a plane to take off, it's sitting on the runway. For a plane to take off, it requires around 20 to 25% of its total fuel. And I've looked into this as well. For a Boeing 747, I mean, the capacity, it takes around 6,000 gallons of fuel just for it to get off the ground and into the air. And the capacity, I believe it's around 40 to 60,000 gallons. So it is around, like, not directly, but different. Obviously, it varies between planes. But just as an example, as a range, it's 20 to 25% of its total fuel to get just simply off the ground. But then, of course, once it's at the right altitude and then cruising can happen, it requires significantly less fuel. Now, if you've seen those posts where it gives an analogy and then says this isn't about X, Y, Z, kind of think about it like that. This isn't about planes. This is about you and your journey and what you're doing. So, obviously, I'm not just going to talk about planes randomly without any context. I'm going to tell you why this is important. So a lot of us try and get off the ground without putting all in. Now, in a lot of situations, you might be thinking, oh, maybe 10k a month is off the ground. Well, no, it's a lot more than that. It's even doing millions. Because Iman Gadzhi spoke about this exact same concept at one point, and he managed to reach to his first £1 million he was 18, so I believe it was around 2016. But he considered getting off the ground stage 2016, 2017, 2018. So that was a few years, even when he was in the millionaire status, you could say. So I just wanted this to kind of explain this concept, because a lot of us don't put in enough and we sit around for too long, and then the results aren't going to show because we aren't putting in enough fuel to be able to get to that cruising altitude. And now I want to move more over to time. So let me just, no, that's about a decent, you could say a decent zoom in amount. So firstly, time compounds cause and effect relationships, and cause and effect relationships govern the universe. So that's literally how things work, and you understand how important time plays in this. So I wanted to go on to this concept or observation, which is called the law of sensitive dependence on initial condition, which is also known as drift. So let us say this ship is embarking on a journey which is 1,000 miles, then it would set this, which is, you could say, is its trajectory. It's set out to embark on this journey from point A to point B. But let's just say just the smallest marginal error of 0.2 degrees off course could lead it going in a complete different direction. Now again, this is another analogy that I've used myself to understand and have this perspective of just simply how things work. So obviously you see it's 150 miles in a different direction, which is a complete different location. Now this can be the same with your business, it can be the same with relationships. If there's just one little thing, one little factor of marginal error, then it's just going to simply lead that trajectory off, like completely off course in a complete different direction. The same thing goes with airplanes as well, another one that can be applied to airplanes, where if it's setting off from the UK to, let's just say, Dubai, and it's just 1 degree off, then you're going to end up in a complete different place. So this is a huge thing that a lot of people don't really understand, and people take for granted just how much of an impact small marginal errors can play in the big scheme of things. So as I mentioned, how this works is, you know how I said time governs, or time dictates how cause and effect relationships work. Simply the smallest marginal error can lead to the largest impact in the long run. So the time that elapses, the larger the drift, you could see. And as an entrepreneur, as someone in this journey, you want to avoid drift and you want to go to that trajectory. If you're setting out on a journey to reach £100,000 a month, you want to get there as soon as possible, as smooth as possible. So any marginal error like this is you want to keep out of the picture, so you stay on this trajectory. And this is very similar to the butterfly effect. I remember when I was younger, I watched this TV show called The Flash, which is, you understand who the Flash is, and you guys might have seen this as well. But the way that this worked is it was really big on time travel, because the Flash himself was able to time travel by going at such speeds that he can jump into different places and appear in 100 years from now. And just really being in that understanding of how important the timeline is massive, because one little thing has such a big impact. And I'm going to go into why and how in a second, but it's very similar to the butterfly effect. So here's an example. No error is what you're aiming for, but the small error, this is what it looks like. So this can be the reality of things. But if you're looking to go on this trajectory of where you're aiming to go, you want to optimize for as little error as possible. So now I want to talk to you about second order consequences. So it's in the name, right? You might think consequences and you don't actually understand really what that means. But if you put it quite literally, con is negative. So you'd say consequence, it's a sequence. So sequence is the order of things. So for example, my routine could be a sequence of events. So say if I get out of bed, I make my breakfast, it's a sequence of events. So in this situation, consequence is the negative sequence of events, okay? So why this is so important, right, is because to be in the mindset of considering the second consequence or the second order consequence of a particular action has such a huge impact, because as we were talking about, your actions could lead to the smallest marginal error. So that's why you need to make sure all your actions are accounted for, just to stay on this straight line of trajectory. So that's why that's really important. I'm going to give you some literal examples to how this can play in both positive and negative directions. So an example of this, right, is if I do a cold call today, then, well, yeah, this is the timeline of the consequences in a positive direction, of course. So you could just say sequences of what a cold call could look like. So here is, I've written it out. So the action is a cold call. So the first order consequence, I say consequence, but just understand it's in a positive direction, okay? So you could just say sequence, but the first order sequence of that would be to book an appointment, okay? So I did a cold call, I booked an appointment. Now the second order consequence of that appointment is the lead shows up to the meeting, and then they're won on the service. So the third order consequence would be the lead pays, which means I've got a new client, which is the fourth order consequence, which means more money. And then it also, if it's a new agency starting out, then the ability to complete the services, which could also lead to a testimonial. But in this situation, the fifth order consequence of that is the confidence in the ability to sell and complete the service. Especially for new agencies, if it's something that's never been done before, then having that first client and being able to then say, okay, I've done this, these are the results we've got, and this is how it works, and you know that you've already got the processes and the systems built out, then you already understand, then it's just going to lead to the sixth order consequence, which is more clients. So that's just a brief overview. Obviously, you could do 100 cold calls and this couldn't happen, but in this situation, you've done a cold call and this is how it leads. So this is what you need to understand about your actions and how it impacts you in the future. Now I'm going to go into a more of a tragic route, and I'm going to talk about a negative direction. So an example of this is entering a casino. Now, I've actually written this all out, and I've gotten all the diagrams, but it was too difficult to coordinate on and create in a presented way on Google Docs. So I've just done this as best as I can so you can understand it. So, understand this, right? Say, let me give you an example of it's me, literally me, right? I've never been to a casino before, I've never gambled. But let's just say I go on holiday, because I travel quite a lot, or quite frequently, sometimes it gets the best of me. But let's just say I go to Las Vegas, the place of casinoing, gambling, you could say. And let's just say my first order consequences, or my first negative action, is to enter a casino. The first order consequence of entering the casino would most likely be to gamble, okay, for the first time in this situation. Now, the second order consequence of that, now, this is probably the worst outcome that could happen. If you enter a casino for the first time and you come out up and you win, that's the worst thing that can happen. Let me tell you why, because that's bad, and then obviously you get dopamine, which then that rewards the brain, and the brain wants to repeat said behavior. And the fourth order consequence of this is an addiction. The fifth order consequence is debt. Well, you could actually say it's the other way around. The fourth order consequence will be debt, and the next one after that would be addiction, but in this situation, let's just say it goes addiction and then debt. Now, the sixth order consequence would be to make friends with other gambling addictions, or make friends with others with gambling addictions. Oh, sorry, no, I read that wrong. Make friends with other gambling addicts. So pretty much what that means, right, is then that's going to reinforce the addiction of behavior. But this outcome, all this process came about from one singular action. If I'd never entered the casino, then this wouldn't have happened. Now I'm talking in a situation that is very, like, it's quite unlikely, but this is how things happen. If you see gambling addicts today, it all started with them entering a casino. If you see drug addicts today, it all started because maybe they had a friend that offered them a cigarette or something as little as that. You know how they say weed is a gateway drug? Quite literally, because that's a negative action that leads to the negative consequences of these with the first order, second order, third order, and it goes way beyond this, 8th order, 9th order, 10th order. It goes on for infinity, you could say. And you could put this into literal scientific terms of the order of consequences, both in positive and negative directions when it comes to the universe. You could say the first action was the Big Bang, and the Big Bang then led to first order consequence, second order consequence, and third, and then so on and so forth. You could even say one of those consequences is me, or you could say that's in a positive direction. But yeah, it's really important you install this into your mind and just really adapt to the ability to be able to review what potential your action, or what the potential of your action could lead to. And it's just, that's one of the most important things, because this is something that I always think about. I think about my actions. If I'm to message someone, what impact will that have? I could give you a literal example. Iyad here, or let me speak something more recent. Okay, Ben, I recently reached out to on Instagram. That was my action. Now let's just judge whether this is in a negative direction or a positive. I'm just messing with you, Ben. It's positive, of course. But the first order consequence of that would be having a call with Ben, which I did. Call went amazing. So much value was shared amongst us. And then the second order consequence of that was I mentioned the group and I brought Ben into the group. And then the third order consequence of that was Ben joining the cause, introducing himself, giving value about, which is of course is part of the sequence. That's how things go. And then the next thing is Ben's on the call today, and that's an example of an action that led to a positive sequence of events, you could say. Do you get what I'm saying? So this can be applied to so many things. Even, like, for example, my partnership with Iyad is definitely, there's more time that has elapsed in our partnership, so there's more sequence of events that has occurred in how we originally came about, how, the partnerships we've made and how that's developed. You could even say the first action of me simply sending Iyad a message, or Iyad sending me a message, led to this group becoming about. And you know how I said about how the timeline is so sensitive? And like, just thinking in terms of the literal butterfly effect, where small actions have such a huge impact. Well, think about the impact that action had. If Iyad hadn't messaged me, for example, or I can't remember which way it was, but let's just say Iyad messaged me. If Iyad hadn't sent me that message, we wouldn't be here today. This group wouldn't be a thing. You guys wouldn't all be here. Because it came with our partnership that we created this group, which, of course, in thinking in terms of sequence of events, that's how things came about. So do you guys understand how important thinking in this manner is, especially in business? If you think, okay, I'm going to do 100 cold calls today, and this is the sequence of events it could lead up to, this is the process of events it could lead up to, how important that could be. Now, this is the end of my document, if I'm to be honest, because I did plan on preparing this all today, so I have just rushed this, actually, in the past couple hours. But, yeah, I'm gonna give some people, if you want to wave your hand, and if you want to say anything or have any questions, because I know you guys can't just unmute, you have to request to become a speaker. So if you guys wanted to add on anything or ask me any questions about that, and then I can move on to another topic, because I know it's only been 15 minutes, and I wanted to make a really juicy recording here. So if you guys wanted to say anything, just pop your hand up, and I'll let you in. And then, yeah, there we go. Invite to speak. There we go. Invite sent. Let's see what Iyad's got to say. Hello.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how'd
Man,
you find that?
man, wonderful, wonderful. I'm surprised within one day you said something very nice together.
I mean,
Well,
these are just. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, you know, go ahead, brother.
I was just saying, this is. You could understand, right? There's tons of coaches out there, there's tons of gurus, but what they mostly do is they teach instructions. The best thing that you can do when you're teaching someone is to teach a mindset or to teach a perspective on something. So what I try and do whenever I teach someone is I don't tell them, okay, do this, do that, do that. I mean, you can in essence say that, but you want to give them your perspective. If you understand and know how to do something, then you want to be able to give them that perspective so then they can do that themselves or they can think like you. I'm going to invite Ben to speak. Ben wants to say something. Let's see what Ben's got to say. Hey, Ben.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. I had my external mic muted, but that's good. I didn't realize it first. Yeah. First off, great lesson, bro. Like, genuine eye opener. The thing I liked most, just to give you some positive feedback, was the diagram. Right. Like, I'm a very visual, photographic person. So some great feedback I have is that you use the diagram, which really helps for people, especially me, to internalize the lesson that's being taught from the likes of yourself and sharing it with others like myself. So, a round of applause there. Secondly, I just kind of wanted to add onto what you said, and I think something really important, something that I really agree with what you said as well, is about teaching principles. The way like I would put it is, and how I've always been is, I love fundamental learning and I love fundamental application.
Yeah.
So instead, like you said, just instead of going do this, do this, do this, do this, like a lot of coaches do, teach them the fundamentals and why things work the way they do, and teach them specific laws which are universally applicable across any said component of the business. And that's always something that I've applied to both learning and applying to business. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's in terms of a real coach. A real coach teaches their perspective, because then they could go away with 10 students, and then those students can go away with a set of instructions, but still they don't have that perspective of what they actually need to do, and how, as you mentioned, the fundamentals and the principles to how things work, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really good as well as with that is reverse engineering would be a good way to kind of, I feel like that you could predict the order of consequences. So if you was at number one or even at number two and you wanted to know what number six or seven was going to be, start at seven, understand what, like picking any outcome, right? For example, if you want to make 20K a month, okay, if I want to make 20K a month, what would come just one step before that and one step before that, and then you'd eventually get to where you're at now.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, another example of this, right, is you could be in debt and you could buy a TV. Because I've got a few examples here of how this can be applied just for specific circumstances. So you could be in debt, right, and you could buy a TV. Now, buying a TV, what does that lead to? It leads to wasting time and also instant gratification. But because you've bought that TV, you feel a purpose or an obligation to then watch the TV. And then that means you're not going to the gym, you're not reading as much, and you're spending that time elsewhere, so you're sacrificing that time towards the TV, which is initially a negative investment. And then obviously that leads to more instant gratification, so you're hardwiring your brain for instant gratification, which means less work, which means less money, which means more debt. So it's obviously this feedback loop of how things work, where if you're in debt, you do this, you do that, and being in this mindset of how things can play out is you have to really be accountable for your actions, and you have to really think things through, because a lot of people just forget that this is real life. So if you do something today, it can have an impact from 10 years from now. And I say this as well, I say this to some of my clients, and I've said this a lot in the past, where I am still receiving the benefits of work that I've done years ago. For example, if I've done, I can give you an example. Yeah, remember Naveed, right? Alright, anyway, Naveed's someone that I outreached about a year, or just a little bit over a year ago now. And we had a meeting, literally, it was just over a year ago. And that was a year ago. Okay, so we are actually close to closing this guy now on different services, since we've been nurturing for a very long time. He's probably the longest person I've ever nurtured. And let's just say we close him tomorrow, just as an example. I would be receiving that due to the work that I did a year ago. So you understand what I'm saying? Just being in the mindset of understanding your actions and holding yourself accountable and thinking before you do something is really important. And I'm not just trying to be cliche and say, oh, think before you do something, blah, 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 but just really being in the mindset of understanding what your actions are and what the consequence it can have would be.
Aaron, I actually have people who are to listen to this recording later on. How does one come to with their mindset?
Well, there is a process of doing this, right? So have you guys heard of a paradigm? Where a paradigm is essentially your belief system or your perspective on reality. if you want to change your paradigm or have a paradigm shift, it isn't that easy. You have to be opened up or shifted into a new paradigm. And it's not something that, again, like I said, it's not something where someone could tell you something and you're just going to instantly believe it and have a paradigm shift. It's something that comes about less naturally, but requires, you could almost say, consistency. So like a repetitive action or a repetitive, said, action to then amplify or just solidify that paradigm is almost what's necessary for that to come about. So you could say, right, because if you are trying to manually change your perspective on reality, it's going to require a lot of work behind that. So it's going to take a lot more than just watching one YouTube video. Maybe you'll have to repeat that action to then really install that new paradigm, or that you'll really just make the paradigm shift click, where it's just a repetition of behavior. So you ask how to get into the mindset of understanding the consequences, where it's first order, second order, third order. Maybe just have it something where you're actively thinking about it. You could even maybe write out a diagram and have that diagram on your door, for example. Now, on my office door, I actually have loads of quotes written out. I've got, if I look here, I've got, "He who has a why can bear almost any how," which is also my Discord profile, which makes me look at it and think, actually, no, it's not my Discord profile. My Discord profile is something else. But this is another quote, which is pretty much saying, he who has a why can bear almost any how. So if you have a why, so your why might be, I want to retire my mum, and then the how is pretty much how are you going to achieve that. Then you can bear almost any how. Essentially, it pretty much speaks for itself. But yeah, I've got loads of quotes on my door. So a way to kind of install this in your mind might be having this on your door, so you see it every day, and then it's a repetition of just installing that into your mind and just constantly and actively thinking about it when you do things. It's like learning. You can't just learn something instantly. You have to repeat the action, you have to practice, and you have to repeat it. It comes with absolutely everything. But just maybe finding a way to actively be thinking about it a lot more can help a lot. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, right. I'm going to move on to something else now, but I haven't got a diagram for this. If you guys just give me 2 seconds, I'm going to pull up something else that I've gone through in the past. Another diagram that I've made a while back. So just give me... Alright, so this one's from the EchoDrop course that I made a few months ago. And as we were just talking about a paradigm, so how you perceive the world and reality. Now let me zoom in for this one because it's a special one. Ben, you love diagrams, you're going to love this one, it's full of amazing diagrams. So, how we perceive the world dictates how we make decisions, which is important on the way we act. And literally, if we take a step back, I was just mentioning how important our actions are, right? So if we're going, okay, this is how actions work, because if you think about it as a timeline, right, I've just gone in talking about our actions and the importance and how that consequences work. So I think about it as actions and then the sequence after the action. Well, now we're going a step before that, so a step before the action, which is our perception on the world and how we understand reality, because obviously that dictates our decisions, which dictates the way we act, which then leads to these consequences, okay? So, here's an example of 3 guys, one of them here wearing green glasses with green lenses. So you know how you've got those like cinema glasses, those 3D cinema glasses, where one's like blue and one's red. Think about it like that. So this person's wearing glasses with green lenses, this person's wearing glasses with red lenses, and this person's wearing glasses with blue lenses. Now, there could be a drawing. Just think about this as a canvas, right? There's a drawing, okay? Now, the reality of this drawing is blue, okay? So this person here, because they're wearing blue glasses, they're going to see it as blue, okay? So they see the world as blue, which is, in this situation, reality. This is true. Now this person here, person 2, let's call them, they see the world as red, because they're wearing a red lens. So because that's how they perceive reality and that's how they see reality, that's how it manifests for them. So they see this diagram as red. And now this person here, the third person, person 3, has a green lens, so he sees the diagram as green, okay? Now, arguably, this guy's right, because he's seeing blue and it is arguably blue. So he has the right perspective on reality to understand what is true. So he holds the true reality. He's right. But none of them know who's right, because they all only know what they believe. And they all believe themselves to be right. They all believe themselves to be true. Since person 3 here has green glasses, he believes that it's green. This person here believes it's red, and this person believes it's blue. But until you take your glasses off, you don't know who's right. But in this situation, since it's just an example on how we see reality and how that manifests for us, and whether we believe we're right. These people are going to act as if they are right, so they might argue. They might say, "Oh, it's green. I see it's green. What are you talking about?" No, it's not red. It's green. Same with colorblind people, for example. My friend Johnny, if you guys know Johnny, he's colorblind actually, which is quite funny. Leads to some fun conversations where we're out shopping in Spain, and there was these pair of shorts, right, that were beige, but he thought no pair of shorts that were pink, and he saw them as beige. So he's saying, hang on a second, they're beige. What do you mean? I'm like, Johnny, they're pink. I can even send you. I took a picture of the shorts. It was really funny, but they are pink. But because he's colorblind, he sees them as beige. But because he sees reality as that color, he believes that to be true. Right. So this is, again, like another sequence of how things work. So it's kind of like backwards, but just think about it like this. So remember how Ben was just talking about reverse engineering things and taking a step back. So say if the seventh order consequence is something and then going backwards, then that's how it works. So for example, your life. So your life today is the sum of, oh wait, actually your life, okay, so how much money you make a month, as an example, is the sum of all the decisions you have ever made. All the decisions you have ever made is because of all the options you have ever perceived. All the thoughts you have ever made, confusing myself, I'm tripping over my own feet. All the options you have ever perceived is the sum of all the thoughts you have ever made, and so on. The sum of all the thoughts you have ever made is or the sum of that is how you see or perceive something, and then of course you've got, that all comes back down to your paradigm. So think about this as a tree, okay, where the flowers or the beauty of the greens is your life, okay, or in some people's cases, unfortunately, that might not be the case. But if you go all the way down to the root of the tree, you've got the roots, which is the paradigm. It all comes back down to your paradigm, how you perceive reality, okay? Now, this is something because when I go out in public, right, especially in the UK, especially in Nottingham, I mean, if you go in like Manchester, I know Angelo said he's in Hull, and you get all sorts of people with 8 fingers and 12 toes, as Naveed once mentioned, then something I actively think about is when I'm in these places is what their paradigm might be, what their perception or how they perceive reality, how that is for them. Because they've made their actions, which obviously leads to these negative consequences in this order. But I'm just kind of thinking and looking at people, what's their paradigm, what is their reality? Because I'm trying to understand that, because of course this then leads to this equation of someone's life, which is obviously the sum of the decisions, and you guys see how this works, right? And if I'm to go backwards, right, so your paradigms, the way you perceive reality, or the way you see something to be true, the world especially, is how you perceive something, which then that obviously dictates how all the thoughts you would make. If I'm a drug addict and I see reality as all I care about is drugs, blah, 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 then I'm going to then see the world in that perspective. It's going to manifest in that way for me. I'm going to want drugs. I'm going to seek that, and that's how I'm actively going to be thinking. And for example, here it says all the options you've ever perceived. Now, in some situations, people perceive different options. They might be in a situation where, for example, let me give you a literal example of this. When I'm in college, there's different options I can make. I can continue in college, I can go the route of uni education, or I can then, create my own business as I have done, and go that route. But you have to understand there's many different options. So based on the person we are, and based on how we perceive the world to be true, is how options will come about, if that makes sense. And I'm not going to stay into this too long, okay, because this is a diagram or example from the past. But you need to be able to adjust your paradigm to optimize for success. Now, this is a big one. Now, remember that, okay? And as I was just talking about with Iyad, you can change your paradigm. And a paradigm shift, it's called a paradigm shift. But the way that comes about is repetition of said change. Now, again, there's going to be some more diagrams. I know, Ben, you're waiting for this, okay? And yeah, I've explained this to some people, but just really understanding this perception and walking away with this and thinking about how you can apply this will do wonders for you in your life if you can actively be thinking about this. This is something that I don't do as much as I should do. It's something that I should be as well. Something that I understand and something that I definitely represent and preach. So that's why I'm moving on with this. So, to understand your paradigm means to understand how you currently view the world or reality. Because this applies to everything in business, appointment booking, ads, outreach and sales. Now, a lot of you guys know, in business, right, decision making is fundamentally one of the most important things. What decision you make, what partnership you make, what you do this, what you do then, within business, decision making is arguably one of the most important things. And to be able to make the most accurate decisions, you have to have the most accurate perception on reality. If you have the belief system that cold outreach doesn't work, and that is your solid belief system, then that is how reality will manifest for you. If you believe something to be true, that is how it will manifest. Now, let me give you another example or another analogy. It is near impossible to act out of alignment of your beliefs, okay? So, like, if you genuinely, wholeheartedly believe something to be true, it is just genuinely near impossible for your life and for your body, your mind, to act out of alignment to those beliefs, okay? Which is why the belief system is so important. Now, when it comes to the entrepreneurial journey, right, you've got three things. You've got the belief system, skills, and characteristics. Now, the belief system is so important because you can use that and manipulate that to drive more results. You can manipulate your belief system, as I just mentioned, within outreach. If your reality is that cold outreach isn't working for you, that's probably because you have the belief that cold outreach doesn't work. So if you then flip that on itself and say, okay, I've got this belief that cold outreach doesn't work. Hang on, let's flip this around. Let's change this. Cold outreach does work. And then you wholeheartedly believe cold outreach works. I guarantee it will manifest in that way where it actually does then work to you. But it's only because you've shifted that and changed your reality. In a part, you could call it a paradigm shift in essence. Is that has come about. Okay. So in this situation, the first step is to be aware of that. So once you reach this, then you're 99% ahead of the world, because most people go about thinking drugs, oh, some drugs, you know, or I've got to study for my exam. So that was aimed at you, Manny, or anything. But so a lot of people go about not even considering or thinking in this mindset. So I don't mean to dig at anyone there. That's just an example, though. A lot of people are just thinking and not necessarily applying these perceptions or these fundamental principles that dictate how a lot of things work. And as I mentioned, they literally dictate how cause and effect relationships, which literally govern the universe, how they play and play a part in reality. But to understand your reality, which means how you currently view the world, you have to, well, yeah, as I mentioned, this applies to everything. And then, yeah, this is another example, right? So this applies to relationships. Now, this is an example that I like, where, let me give you an example, okay? I'm going to literally put this into a real life situation, okay? So person one, now think about this, and I want to go in the route of relationships, okay? Person one has never been in a relationship, so has no relationship experience whatsoever, okay? Person two has been in a relationship and been cheated on multiple times, and person three, who has been in a relationship and cheated on the person. So these persons, they've got no coordination, there's no correlation between these two people. They're just three different people, okay? But in this situation, 3 is the cheater, 2's been cheated on, and 1's never been in a relationship. They are going to have different perceptions on the world. Now, if this person's been cheated on multiple times, they're 100% they're going to go out there thinking, oh yeah, all men do is cheat, because that's their perception on reality. But their perception on reality has only come about based on the past experiences they have had. Now, think about, I mean, this is something that's been massive for me, especially in my life, okay? And only recently have I understood how this has come into play, but let me explain it for you. Think about it. I should probably prepare a diagram for this. Think about a scale. Okay, actually, you know what? I've got Myro. It's my little, you could call it my jungle of outreach and SOPs, but let me give you a little example. Move the recording over here. How do you draw a scale? Okay, so we've got a little, see, that's a scale. It looks like a person, but it's not. Okay, and then you've got the little scale, and then you've got think about this as a scale, okay? I'm not sure how that works, but you could see out that, okay? Think about this as a scale, okay? So you've got 2 baskets here. Now, when it comes about building these perceptions and building this paradigm shift, okay? Think about it as you've got negative experiences and you've got positive experiences, okay? And these come into action or come into play based on, well, 2 things. Literal reality, so that it could be actual experience that you have in your life. So you might go about your day and an alcoholic might punch you in the face. That's going to be, okay, I'm giving you an example from my life here. We're going to get a little bit personal, but alcohol. I'm not an idiot. Alcohol. Bosh. And, okay, so I'm going to go red is negative and green is positive, okay? So in this way, an alcoholic's come and punch you in the face for no reason. That's going to be a negative experience in coordination to alcohol. Now, let's say you go partying. Obviously, you can say the size of the rock is the size of the level of that and how that works. But understand the scale is your belief system, okay? So then these little experiences dictate whether you fall positively or negatively towards that thing. So alcohol, for example, you might have a party and alcohol is involved and it's really fun. That could then dictate that, and then it brings the scale back, it evens out. But then, for example, for me, having been or had prior alcohol abuse in the family and things like that, personally, I've just got, and I mean, I don't drink, never have, never will. I've actually never been drunk before, fun fact about me. And the way that this works, right, is, what was I going to say? Let's just say there's been alcohol abuse in the family, that could be a massive tipping point, okay? You know how people say tipping points? This is because this is how it works. But that could just massively tip the scale. And then you've built a massive negative belief about alcohol. Whether true, whether not true, that this is how belief systems come about, based on experiences. Now, it's actually a fun fact, this, but if you relive a negative or positive experience in your mind, whether that's, or, the level of vividness based on that belief system, it can actually re-implement itself. So, as I mentioned, it could then lead to extra stones. If you then and spend months and months thinking about a specific thing, that's going to lead to even more. It's kind of like new stones onto the scale based on that belief, and pretty much, yeah, there's a huge impact it can have. And it's a pretty shit diagram. I tried my best, Ben. Don't hate me for this, but I'll make sure I've created more diagrams before. And yeah, so obviously in this situation, you've got three people that have such different perspectives on the world. You put these three in a room, they're going to argue because they've all got their own specific belief systems, and they all don't, they're not the same, they're different, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's all based on people's prior experiences and people's past or pasts within these things. Now, this is another analogy. This one I love so much because it's quite literally the history of the world. So, another negative or false paradigm many people had was smoking is good for you, okay? And you see why this is wrong, because people believe something to be true, which is how it manifests for them. So they believe smoking to be true, which then the second order consequence of that, or would then obviously lead them to smoke, but then the next order consequence of that would be for them to then smoke, and then so on and so forth. It creates this downward spiral of obviously, because reality is that smoking isn't actually healthy and smoking isn't actually good for you, but because this person had this false and faulty belief system, it's then led them to believe this, okay? So honestly, I want to ask, why does this mean anything, okay? Now, think about it like this. I'm sure you've probably heard of a paradigm shift, and a paradigm shift occurs when a perception of reality is challenged by new information that has credence and believability. So, let's say, obviously I'm not sure exactly when it was, but then doctors then understood that, okay, smoking is actually probably around the 1960s, would you say? 1960s, 70s, where smoking has then actually been discovered to not be healthy and not be good for you. And then, obviously, that's something that has then challenged many people's paradigms. It's challenged people's belief systems. And if, let's just say, they've done a study, and you understand the diagram of where there's the healthy lungs and the unhealthy lungs, a smoker's lungs, where the smoker's lungs are black and the healthy person who doesn't smoke are just normal colour, then that's something that has credence and that has believability, because you're showing them something that then challenges that belief system in a manner that is actually believable, because they can't argue with the facts. And then that could lead to a paradigm shift where someone who believes smoking is good for you then understands that it's bad. Now, I'm explaining this because just really understanding how a faulty belief system can lead to these negative and downward spirals within our actions, okay? So just changing this to then, you can manipulate this in so many ways. If you change your belief system, you can change how you live your life, and you can change so much about that. Now, this is another one. The Wright brothers, the people who actually, and I know we've gone into a lot of airplane analogies here, but we're going to go into another one, okay? So they invented and built the world's first successful plane, okay? So prior to this invention, the world's paradigm was that flight was impossible. I can't exactly remember the exact year, but yeah. And to move on how this works, they had a childhood toy which led to their paradigm shift that flight was in fact possible. So this is their dad. I believe his name is Orville, one of the brothers, and they gave him this toy, which then obviously they thought, okay, maybe flight is possible. So this is a paradigm shift for them, because if they had the reality that For example, they had the reality that flight is impossible. They see a toy that challenges that with credence and believability, so they then believe, okay, flight is actually possible. Then they will then explore other ways of pursuing that. So the Wright brothers believe, okay, well, sorry, it's been a while since I've looked through this document, so you need to refresh myself a little bit. So yeah, here's an example. People believe them to be, ludicrous, for example, and they risked everything to, obviously now they know there's fathers of flight. Okay, so you guys understand that. So they challenged the world's paradigm. So they seemed crazy until they proved their invention to the entire world, which led to a paradigm shift within the entire world. Now we are still discovering it and having paradigm shifts. You might understand there's all sorts of things where something can get proved not to be true. As long as it's been backed up, then there's believability there, which then leads to the paradigm shift. Now, in some circumstances, repetition of that is in order and is necessary, but in many circumstances it's not. So if I move on, your current paradigm and perception on the world and your business could be limiting you. So if you believe, for example, flight isn't possible, then that's limiting you, because then you'll never be able to fly, and then people won't see that. But obviously then this goes into terms of an agency. Just give me 1 second just to... Okay, yeah, so yeah. Because it's been a good 6 months, so sometimes I do find that I need to update myself on things. So, how does this link to the requirements of being a successful agency owner? Now, I know I've just seen Massimo, I've seen Drew, Manny, and a few other names pop in the call, and Joel as well, good to have you here. But we've been going on for about 41 minutes now, so there's a lot in the back that we haven't gone into, so it's a little bit... Because obviously this is all... For those who have stayed in here, like Ben and Leon and things, you will understand that this has been, I've gone through quite a lot of things in this order. So if you guys want to go back and watch the start, then this will then obviously make more sense. But for now, moving into the agency owners, I did say at the start of the call I wasn't making this too specific, because I know there's some people who run agencies, do trading and crypto and all sorts of things. So I'm just making this in terms where everyone can understand and take things from this, no matter what their circumstances are, no matter what stage they're at. I just want everyone to benefit and take away from this. But now moving on to the next stage, okay? So, if you are able to control and be able to, dictate your paradigm, then you're going to be able to control many initial conditions. And as we mentioned, initial conditions and just setting on with that initial action and the importance that has and how that, changes things, then that allows you to take control and accurately manifest your desires. So, this is a random person jogging along, going on about his normal day, which is with his current perception of reality. Now, as we just spoke about with paradigm shifts, I'm still just drilling this in, because if you guys can understand to control paradigm shifts, then you can honestly change and make anything possible. But see, in this situation where this person's going about the day with their current perception of reality, and then some new information comes about, what that means is that's probably going to challenge their current belief system. So we've got some information here, or it can go one of two ways. They could either reject the information and then continue on their current path, or they could decide to believe or take on the new information and accept that paradigm shift, which then leads to a new perception of reality, which leads to a new paradigm, which leads to new actions, which leads to a new situation. Now, think about it like this, right? There's another example here, okay? So let's say this person's current perception of reality is smoking, as I've just explained. Okay, so this is their current reality, where smoking is healthy. They think smoking is healthy, they do it. I mean, this is thinking like back in the olden days, this is what people believed. A lot of people know smoking is not healthy now, but they continue anyway. But let's just say in terms of this person's belief system is that smoking is healthy, and that's why they smoke. Then they could come across the information that smoking is not healthy. Now they can choose to accept or reject that information. Now in terms of if they reject the information, then their current reality stays the same, which means their paradigm stays the same, so how they see the world, which means their actions stay the same, which means they're going to continue smoking, which means their situation stays the same, with poor health and then eventually death. You might say, oh, well, my granddad survived to 90 as a smoker. Well, yeah, you can't argue with the facts. It's bad for health, and that's just how things work. Or, as I just said, this person can choose to accept that information, which means they have a new perception on reality. They have a new... Like, they see the world in different eyes, And then obviously this has such a huge impact because then it leads to them having a new perception on reality. And because they have a new perception of reality, it leads to them taking new actions. So if they then truly believe, oh, smoking's not healthy, that means that, okay, they're going to be thinking in the mindset of, okay, I don't want to smoke, which leads to them taking new actions, where they, for example, they could then join a one of the like the rehabilitation groups, or they could go into rehab for smoking because they could be addicted. But that came about because they had the paradigm shift of what is, what is true and what is reality. And obviously being able to understand reality is going to dictate a lot of our actions. If you believe something to be true, like I said, it's near impossible to act out of alignment to that belief. So if you believe something to be true, you're going to do it and you're going to act on that belief. So if you can align your beliefs as closely as possible with reality and what reality actually is, then that's what's going to actually drive results and make these massive changes. Because again, like I said, it's going to lead to a new situation where in this analogy, the new situation is this person's smoking free, they don't smoke anymore, which means they live longer and they just get a longer life, okay? And the difference of accepting or rejecting information leading to a paradigm shift is the dictating initial condition which will lead to or different outcomes, you could say. And remember how we spoke about, a while back, how important initial conditions are. If I go back here, back to the other one that I've just explained. Okay, so initial conditions. Let me zoom out a little bit. 110%, there we go. So, again, like I said, this ship embarks on a journey that looks to go from point A to point B, 1,000 miles. The initial condition is them being 0.2 degrees off course. If they're 0.2 degrees off course and that's one of the initial conditions, then that's their trajectory. They're going to land up in a new, different place. And that's the power of the initial condition. But only that it can be manifested into reality based on the perception, which comes as a product of the belief system, of the paradigm. So I'm going to move on a little bit more. So, yes, this is again what I was talking about with Yad. Because a lot of you, if you're wanting to take action on this and understand what I say, then you're probably going to be thinking, okay, how do I actually apply this? So, where are we? Yeah, so as I mentioned before with Iyad, when he asked, it's not easy, okay? It takes humility, so you have to understand, okay, the belief system, the paradigm that I have is not true, and then you have to then accept what the true belief system is, and you have to repeat that. And then 3, you also have to act on that. You have to learn and take more knowledge. Let's just say someone thinks, okay, there's no way to escape the 9 to 5, I'm going to be working a job forever. Then a belief system, okay, that could be a faulty belief system, because actually there is ways to get out of the 9 to 5 and make money elsewhere. But because they have that belief system, and as we said, it's near impossible to act out of alignment to your beliefs, they're going to then act in alignment to those beliefs. But if they flip that around and say, okay, well, maybe there is actually ways, or they see an advert on trading, or they see an advert, let's say Iman Gadzi pops up on the For You page saying, I run an agency and I make £300 million a month, or whatever's being thrown around these days, then that could then challenge their belief system. Iman could then pull up his Stripe balance, or his Stripe monthly payment, and say, this is how much money, and then he refreshes it and shows, okay, I've made this much amount of money. Now that's something that, with credence, again, that challenges their belief system, because there's an essence of believability there. If he's got social proof, etc., then that's going to challenge that person's belief system. Now only with repetition of that belief, where in some sense they could just look at one thing and that will be enough, but for a real paradigm shift to come into play, it's going to take a lot more than that. Because, for example, you guys might have experienced this, where you've seen something new and you've thought about it, but you haven't really put anything into play. You haven't taken action on it. You haven't made any difference. But in this situation where you understand that, and you understand ways on how you can apply that to make differences, or change your reality by manifestation, then in most cases repeatability is one of the most important things. Because you could learn a YouTube video that challenges your belief system with credence and believability, but only by watching that once a week for the next month or something will that actually lead to a complete paradigm shift. And this can be in many different aspects. I guess it depends on the level of severity, or the size or the scale of a paradigm to then have an impact. If someone's entire life is based on the world being flat, let's just say, then it's going to be a whole lot harder to change their paradigm, as opposed to someone who only believes the world's flat for a week, let's just say. because they've invested so much more, they've been committed, and they're dedicated to that belief system. Now, for example, as we said, humility. If they feel a sense of embarrassment about being wrong about that, because again, if you've dedicated your whole life to a belief system to then find out that you're wrong, then that's going to take a lot of balls to accept that. So you guys see why sometimes it can be difficult to change someone's paradigm. So now this is something else I want to talk to you about, because all the information that you consume forms your current paradigm. You know how I spoke to you about the scale and having negative and positive experiences that dictate how you believe something to be true? Well, this is very similar to this. All the information you consume, that literally forms your current paradigm. So that's beliefs, assumptions, judgments, convictions, principles, ideas, ideologies, views, understandings, theories, knowledge, faiths, axioms, models, hypotheses, guesses, stances, positions, right? So there's many different things that has influenced your current paradigm. But again, it comes down to different experiences and a lot of different things. Every single person in this call today has a different paradigm. It might be similar in some cases, but we all have different life experiences where we've all experienced different things. We've all gone through different experiences, I just said. And that then dictates and leads to different paradigms and different perceptions on reality. But only the person who seeks to understand reality for what it actually is, then they've got a better understanding for, as I mentioned, what reality actually is, if that makes sense. And I'm just trying to explain this in ways where you understand it and you can actually take it away and apply it to your lives. Because again, this is such a powerful thing if you know how to manipulate this and put it into play. Because as I mentioned before, you can change this one thing, it can change absolutely everything. So I don't think... Yeah, okay, let me give you another example, okay? So let's just say I want to do something. Or, okay, I'm going to go back a little bit. So let's say, how we talk about requirements of doing something. It's a lot more deeper than just that. If I want to become, or you need to become the person that is successful. So if you want to be a successful agency owner, you need to become that person. So let me get another quote here. If you want to do something, it isn't about doing that thing, it is about becoming the person that can. So chase the character, don't chase the goal, okay? I mean, you can chase both, but you just understand what I'm saying. So here's me with all my muscles, where Aaron, okay, I've never recorded a video before. Now, current day, I've actually recorded a ton of videos, which is why I'm able to speak quite well and be able to make these explanations in a way where you probably think, oh, he's like a professor, I don't know how you want to say, but in this situation where I haven't recorded a video before, but I want to be the person that can record videos, or recording videos is my way of bridging the gap that I need to become the person that I have to become, then I have to become the person that can come to record videos. So I might look at Iman Gadzi, for example, because he's able to record amazing videos. I might look at his behaviors, I might look at his hand gestures, I might look at his tonality, how he explains things, and then if I want to become like that, then I can just replicate that myself. You guys get what I'm saying? And this can be done in so many different ways to make so many different impacts. Now I'm at the end of this document. It's a pretty big one. I'm coming up to an hour now. I've gone through two whole analogies, two whole different explanations where there's going to be tons of value shared in this. I see we've got quite a few people in the call now. So given that I'm towards the end of that explanation, I feel like now's the perfect time for questions. So if you guys want to raise your hand, I can let people in, and then I can let you speak. If you want to add on anything or ask me any questions, now's the time. So I'm just going to leave, and not leave, but I'm going to wait for anyone to raise a hand if they have anything to say. I don't bite, guys, if you want to ask anything. Because I know some of you just joined recently, so you wouldn't have heard what's mentioned at the start of the call. But those of you like Leon, Ben, Iyad, even Amani was in for quite a while. But you guys understand what I was talking. Angelo as well was in for quite a while. But again, as Iyad just mentioned, this video is being recorded and will be shared. So if you guys want to go back and go through the whole video, then you feel free to. A little bit of a rehydration break if you guys want to hop in and say anything. Anyone got any questions about anything? Even any feedback would be helpful. Put his hand up. There you go, invite him. Hello.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I hear you.
I just want to say a little bit of a funny story between how Aaron and I met, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of talking about how smart and intelligent Aaron is, and how we made through we went through the sequences to what the group is today.
Can you
When Aaron,
can I just stop you a second? Can you make sure you're speaking into the microphone because it keeps going a bit muffly like it did before? Like it goes a bit
listen,
silent, so it
I'll
can be a bit
leave the
hard.
call for real quick. Just turn off
Okay.
my AirPods and I'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
Anyways, a little bit of a funny story I just wanted to share with everyone. Uh, when Aaron and I first met, we were talking about when I was looking for a new outreach system for my agency, and we were going back and forth, and we had someone else. His name is he's Angel, not Angelo, who's in this group, and that guy was a huge waste of time. Me and Aaron going back and forth with
Yeah.
outreach system. In the end of the day, I was a little bit childish and I blocked him. He reached out to me on Discord because I don't use Discord much and I didn't block him over there. And we had a man-to-man talk and Aaron was the most understanding guy ever. He understood patience sequences like he's explaining right now. And since then, it was around 8 months ago, I believe. And 2 months after that, we started working together, affiliating together, and we even started the club over here. The idea is here, I really think you guys should learn from Aaron a lot. He's an amazing teacher, if I might say, to be honest. And it's a little bit of a funny story background, so you guys see how we came along. We actually had a very heated argument at that time. Until then, we became friends.
Yeah. Is an amazing story where such like if for example if I hadn't messaged you on Discord and I had just left it then we wouldn't be here today. So I'm just trying to
Absolutely.
really drill this into people's minds how much power our actions have and just really like for example the butterfly effect that how this can impact things because it did have like a
Absolutely.
huge impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing is, Ifrahin right here, me and him met way long ago. And even though it took a while until we got clients into that agency, my previous agency was still successful and is still successful. The collaboration with me and Efrain, even though it took time, we stuck it out. It went really well. And until now, we're really great friends. And he's coming to Turkey very soon. Well, I'll meet him. We'll actually meet him for the first time. So my partnerships uh, have all of them took a lot of work, but I can confidently say that these are the best partnerships I had ever.
Yeah, definitely has a huge impact. Even a lot of the people here today, I can give you another example, Massimo. The way that I came about connecting with Massimo is we were in a Discord server together, and I messaged him, and I remember this where Massimo was a little bit on edge, like, "Oh, what are you trying to sell me something like that?" And then we, like, obviously, I brought his guard down because I wasn't trying to sell him anything. Then we connected, we had a call together, and it went quite well. But if, for example, Massimo hadn't like replied to my message, then again he wouldn't be here today. Massimo's helped me with a lot of things. He's often I call him like my challenger. He challenges my thoughts. He challenges the way I'm doing things, and it's in a way where it helps me develop, and I appreciate him for that. But for example, you can think about the sequence of events that has come about. If I hadn't messaged him all that time ago, he wouldn't be in my life today. He wouldn't be in this group today, and he wouldn't have helped me with as much as he has in the past. So that wouldn't, I could be in a completely different circumstance. Same thing happens with Pablo, for example. If I hadn't connected with Pablo, if I hadn't partnered with Pablo in the past, then I wouldn't have created the outreach systems that have been so successful for me and other agencies. So the amount of impact that has had is just major based on such a small initial condition. So it's something that's just so crazy to think about and how the timeline works, where it's just one small change can impact so much. It's honestly mind blowing, really is.
Absolutely. I have actually one more story until I'm done. The reason I got to the agency space, well, my family's well off. I can always go to back to their company. That's great. But I used to own a very successful dropshipping store with me and a couple of my friends. And it was running for a while, few years. I was handling the marketing and the ads, and all of a sudden, one of the partners traveled, and then he took out all the money, and went away with 50 grand. It was successful. It was a few months in. We're making 50 grand every single month, and he cleared everything out and he ran away. I was devastated for months. I didn't know what to do. I don't know if Adnan is in this call. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do, and the only thing I kept in mind is I want to make it. The only thing I had in mind is I want to make it. I want to someday appear in his feed and show him that it was the worst decision he ever made, that he ever stabbed me in the back. And since then, I've made way better connections. You see what I'm at? So even if you guys are devastated like I was, I lost three, four friends at that time. They all split the money. And it was a huge deal for me because it was my
Yeah,
first ever
Drew's
business.
Drew's spamming the invite to speak. I'm gonna invite Drew. I want to see what he has to
All right, no worries. Yeah, so it was a huge opportunity
say.
for me, and it took me a few months until I got back on my feet, without any help at all. But hey, man, I'm thankful this happened. I'm thankful I was able to get into this space. I'm thankful I've met people like Adnan, Ifrahim, and Aaron. And to be honest, this is something that I would not change. If I would do it again 10, 100 times over, I would do it again.
If I'm to bounce off of that on my own personal reality, Joel actually,
Yeah.
Joel's in the call today. Joel's been a friend of mine. We went to college together, and we've been friends for, well, I mean, probably about 8, 9 years. But he's the only actual friend that I have and stay in contact with from the past. But I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for Joel. Now let me tell you why. A while ago, I was in the e-commerce space myself, and Joel then mentioned to me, "Oh, have you heard about like the SMMA model?" And then I was like, "Oh no, I haven't actually heard about that before." And then he told me Iman Gadzhi, and this was a few years ago now, so it was quite a while ago before Iman Gadzhi was that popular. But then back then obviously I watched him, and that's what actually led me to move over to the agency space where things just really clicked. I excelled at outreach, and I just love client acquisition and just really staying in that side of things. But had Joel not mentioned that to me, and not mentioned Iman Gadzhi, and not mentioned the SMMA model, then I probably wouldn't be here today. So just really understanding the importance of our actions and even connections is just massive. Now I know, Drew, you've got some things to say, so feel free to unmute and I'll let you speak now. You've got the microphone. Stage is yours,
Am I
buddy.
audible? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yeah.
Yeah, Ed was just mentioning how he got backstabbed. Um, yeah, you just mentioned you like someone stole 50K from you. Am I wrong about
50,
that?
yeah, they cleared out 50K, but that was on there, closed the Shopify account with the coming money, and they just left and split the money with the rest of the guys. When I was the one that opened the business model and showed everyone what to do. And honestly, I'm happy that happened. I've made actual good connections that I would not trade for the world.
Right. No, my point was just to add value to what you said there. Um, if if Bitcoin was involved in any way or form, I can track down the guy and his wallet, if that makes sense.
Unfortunately, my man, it was cleared out from the banking itself. There was no crypto involved, but I'm very happy for you. Yeah, I'm very thankful for you to give me this opportunity, but unfortunately, that's not the case.
No worries, no worries.
Alright, I'm gonna invite Leon now.
Leon is looking to join, so come in it.
Is there a way where I can...
Hey,
Yeah,
Leon, how you
just
doing?
doing good. Yeah, I just had a quick question that I thought maybe would benefit everyone, and it's in terms of the paradigm shifts. Like, what do you think is a big paradigm shift that someone needs to make, going from being a beginner and not having a successful business to having a successful business in the online space? Like, what are
Yeah,
the things that kind of need to click in their head?
that's a brilliant question,
I
actually.
would answer it, but since this
Yeah.
class was done by Aaron, so I think he should be the one to answer.
It's funny, I was actually just speaking then, and I just realised I was on mute. But no, I'll give my answer, and then Iyad, you can feel free to add on or reflect in some way if you want to. But what I would say is, again, it's dependent on the person. But what would be the most prominent belief systems that would be holding people back would be probably with client acquisition. I'd say if it's in the SMMA agency model more specifically that you're talking, it'd be with client acquisition where people think it's so hard, and they have all these belief systems revolving around, oh, I can't do it, I can't do that, and I've heard this saying, well, not necessarily a saying, but just really being in the understanding that we are always standing in our own way. So if you can find out and really be able to take yourself and move you out of your own way, then you will actually get things done. Because we're always forcing ourselves to procrastinate and we're always limiting ourselves. But if you can be able to control that, then yeah. But again, the way that I would say going about understanding what your current belief systems are is look at where you're at. Do an audit of your life, whether it's with your business, whether it's with relationships. It can be so many different things, okay? But do an audit of your life and then see what's limiting you. Say if you are a beginner in the agency model, in the agency space, and you're looking to get from point A to point B and something's limiting you, it's most likely because of a belief. And then you can say, okay, I believe outreach is hard, and that's a belief, okay? Let me flip that around. And then you do an audit of all your beliefs and you write that down, and then you flip it over and you say, okay, outreach is easy. And then obviously it's kind of like affirmations where you have to then install that into your mind with repetition, but that can have a huge impact in, actually in leading into that paradigm shift. But if you're talking, what are the common belief systems in holding back beginners in the agency space? Or could you give me any feedback as to whether you were more specific on the agency space or anything?
Yeah. So, it was kind of just a question I thought would just give me more insight into this. But I think really from what you're saying there, it sounds like that really the I guess the number one needle moving task there that actually gets the result is identifying what beliefs are holding you back. Like actually just finding that you have an incorrect belief or some sort of thing like that. So I guess it's really just around how do you actually go about identifying that stuff. And the way I was going about that was to be like, okay, what actually, what needs to shift in someone's head. But I guess it's just a really valuable skill to be able to identify your beliefs. I guess it comes from just looking at your actions and then kind of reverse engineering to
You
work
have
out
to be really
in a way.
critical as well. Now, you know how I said we stand in our own way? Now, a lot of the time, we're going to be giving ourselves some excuses. We're going to be making, like I said, making excuses for things. So it might help if you have a friend or someone else look at your situation and they can literally be critical and think about it from a neutral perspective. That can help sometimes. But most situations where it's what would be holding you back. If you can't sign a client, then why can't you sign a client? Maybe it's because again, like I said, you believe it to be hard. If you believe it to be hard, you're going to act in alignment to that belief, which then it will be hard, okay? So you understand why shifting and having that paradigm shift is vital to actually receive the results you wanted, the results you want. I feel like I've said everything that I wanted to say. Yeah, do you have any reflections on that?
I do, and actually, I'm gonna work with reverse engineering on this one. Uh, One thing I always did, and one thing that helped me a ton recover from that loss at the very beginning with my dropshipping store, is I would imagine a prime self of Iyad Barudi. I would imagine the prime self of in 10, 20 years and how he'd look like, what he would be, what he'd own, what he would do, what he would work, what we'd eat. And I will base that Iyad on every decision I make. Meaning, would that Iyad in that future sleep in tonight? Would that Iyad eat this tonight? Would he go to this place? Would he do that? Would he take extra 5 hours of call time? And that really helped me change my mindset and everything. I put myself in a prime situation of how I want to be in the future, and I let that Iyad pick my decisions today.
That's amazing. Yeah,
100%.
I've
Exactly.
heard of that kind
Yeah.
of thing before, but that's just completely like sort of reminded me of that. Like, yeah, what would actually the best version of myself actually do in this situation? I'm even thinking about that now, like in terms of okay, I'll be listening more closely, all of this. Like, yeah,
That's
I think
exactly
that's a
what I
great
do
piece
as
of
well.
advice.
Because you know how I said before, you shouldn't chase achieving something, you should chase becoming the person that can achieve said thing, and that's how you'll achieve it. Exactly as Iyad said. He said, what would that Iyad do? That Iyad wouldn't sleep in, and that can then change your actions. If you have that perception, then that can then lead to a change in actions. Now, I know Joel's been waiting about 5 minutes now, so I'll let Joel unmute, and Joel, you can say what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to read a book, a really good book on paradigm shifts, there's a book by Stephen R. Covey called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It's really good, and there's a whole chunk on paradigm shifts for anybody that's more interested in that sort of thing. I read that like right at the start of my journey, and that really helped me with the paradigm shift theory behind it.
If you can send it to the knowledge chat, that would be amazing. Everyone can, because we may forget about it right now. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
check it
I'll
out in
do
the
that.
knowledge chat. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do that now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe.
No problem.
Anyone else want to say anything? Any feedback?
You know, we haven't heard anything from Massimo in a while. I don't know if
Yeah.
Massimo is able to talk currently. Sometimes he's not. But I would love to hear Massimo's point of view on all of this.
Come on, Massimo, let's have your hand up and let's bring you in here.
He's in the middle of cleaning his pool. I love the uh, multitasking that Massimo does.
Yeah. I mean, if we're to go back into, you know how we're talking about what that person in chasing that character would do. Psycho-Cybernetics is an amazing book for that. It's an amazing book for belief systems. It's an amazing book for also how to change that and understanding. You know how I said before, if you believe something to be true, it's near impossible to act out of alignment to that belief. That's something that Psycho-Cybernetics talks a lot about, because it understands how the brain is such a delicate and it's just such a powerful mechanism that if you can manipulate these things, you can make so much happen. And I mean, no, I'm not going to go into some analogies. It's been quite a while since I read that book, but honestly, it's powerful. I recommend to absolutely everyone. It's one of the first books you should read, because, as I said, understanding your paradigm and your belief system is so important, and that's one that just really drills into your mind the importance of that and how it works. But is there anything else? I mean, I've got a lot of books if we're talking books, but I guess it depends, because, for example, for me, the way that I read books is I will read a book based on something that I need in my life, because books give knowledge, and if I feel I'm lacking knowledge in a certain area, or say if, for example, I'm taking a lot more sales calls than I usually do, then I'll read more about sales, because that brings more knowledge, which then brings more value into my life to help me throughout my the knowledge section in the server is for the books. So yeah, we've got the knowledge section in the server, which is for books and to talk all things knowledge, podcasts, all sort of things like that. But yeah, I feel like this has been a really good lesson. I've gone through quite a lot, and for those who are watching the recording, then there's going to be so much value taken from this, and hopefully everyone likes
Guys,
the diagrams.
if you guys are able to, would like to hear some feedback from you on chat. Maybe you guys can go to the feedback section. Tell us about the classes so far. We've had one class and two Q&As by myself. You guys can give us your feedback if you'd like to see what type of styles you'd like to see from this group. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Ben, if you raise your hand, I'd like your opinion, since you've been in the call from the very beginning. I want to know what you think about the whole process and how you think about doing calls like this, because it's the very first official coaching session or like live lesson, like where I've been sharing my screen with an actual class. I know he has done the coaching sessions in the past, but this is, you could say, like the more official live lesson. So if you know any feedback on that would be amazing, and how you felt. I mean, I know you said you like the diagrams a lot. So in the future, like, would you guys like me to create more lessons like this, where I create the invite him to speak, where I create the documents and the diagrams?
What's up, brother? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sweet. Yeah, so in terms of the feedback that you guys were talking about, the one thing I would say, I mentioned the positive feedback earlier, and that stands. There's just some, like, not negative, I would say, more so constructive criticism. I would say it's just whatever you go over, just kind of read the document beforehand to get an idea, and it would help with how smooth the explanation.
I planned out the first one, and then we ended up leading more onto paradigm shifts, and that's a document that I haven't been through in about it was in February I created that for the course, so that's like what, 7 months ago now. And I know and understand how all of it works. It's just the last time I went through the document was quite a while ago, and I didn't plan to go through it. If I'd planned to go through it, then I would have gone through it before. It was just like, it'd been about half an hour, and I wanted just to add more value. I wanted it to go on a little bit further, and we ended up talking about paradigms anyway, so I thought that'd be perfect to lead on with. But yeah, of course, I was kind of in a rush today because I've had like loads of calls, and I had quite a lot of sales calls this morning, so I didn't have as much time to plan this one out, and I wasn't exactly sure what time I'd be having this. But yeah, definitely the next one will be a lot more prepared. I'll put in more time on the documents and more time on the diagrams. And yeah, that's
because I think that your method of explanation is very good, and the way that you portray the diagrams is very good. It's just the how smooth it is, really. That's all the criticism, the constructive criticism I have.
yeah. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, of course.
But
I'm
yeah,
looking
I'm
forward
definitely
to
yeah. I'd be hoping to do one of these weekly, but the thing is, it does take quite a lot of time to figure everything out, plan all the documents, and then create all of the diagrams. And I don't want it to be something that is, you could say, lose its value if I'm doing them too frequently. So I would probably keep it maybe once every 2 weeks potentially, just because of the time that it takes to create the new documents and the ideas. And I don't want it to, if I'm doing it too frequently, I won't be able to do them anymore. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things I can do on whether I go in terms of life lessons and principles and fundamentals like this, or if I want to go into something more specific like outreach, or even deeper down than that, a specific method of outreach. I might want to go into DMs, and a lot of people can take lessons from that. So I mean, potentially I could do it weekly, but yeah. You had any feedback?
Yeah, I wanted to say, here's the thing with we already have courses that we're dropping
Yeah.
by very
Oh,
soon.
yeah. That's true.
So we have already outreach and sales and all these classes. These classes are very specific. They don't have to be about agencies specifically. They can be about partnership, life, mindsets, etc. That's the idea of it all. We're already going to drop courses in outreach, service delivery, agency optimization, etc. I just wanted to tell everyone
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, just sparked my memory about that as well. Need to get on
Yeah.
that quite soon. We'll get the courses out there, and yeah, there'll be tons of value in those as well.
Absolutely. And well, for now, I think Aaron is going to be doing the lessons. I'm just going to stick to Q&As. Unless anyone else wants me to switch from Q&As to lessons as well, that's fine with me.
Funnel breakdowns. Okay. What funnels specifically? Funnels as a whole, or funnels as in sales? Funnels like what are you thinking on that, Massimo? Okay. Yeah, possibly. It's a good idea, Massimo.
Yeah, basically giving constructive
Yeah.
criticism for other members of the group. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Generally.
All right.
And
It is.
we can do that for marketing as well.
Yeah, perfect. So it is getting quite late now, and I want to leave everyone thinking about what we've spoken about today. And hopefully, a lot of you can apply this to your lives, and you can leave this call with a new paradigm or a paradigm shift on. You can have a paradigm shift on paradigm shifts. Let's just say. Anyway, yeah, I hope everyone's taken away lots of valuable lessons from this, and I'll let you guys know when I'm doing the next one, or whether I set a specific time on when I'm doing it in the week, or if I'm doing it weekly. I'll let you guys know. It's something that I need to plan out a little bit more, because it does take a lot of time to sort these lessons out. But yeah, I'm gonna leave the call at that, and the lesson is over now. Anything else you'd like to say? Final things, yeah.
Have a good night, everyone. Anyone else that has any questions, Drew, we'll chat on DMs later on.
In the general.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Take care, everyone. All right. Good night. Bye.